And in 1962, people directly protested outside an RSG, and the government and the news people did not cover that event, even though it was a huge movement, huge moment for the movement. So what I did was I took all that excitingness and decided to make it really boring. What I decided to do was to write about what it's like to be in the crowd of a protest and be there for somebody else rather than be there for the moment and be there for the movement itself. So I'm just going to read a very, very short extract from this, because it's a long story. I'm just going to read the first couple of pages. It's about a person on a protest who perhaps doesn't really want to be there for the reasons why everybody else is there. So this is called The Blind Light. The chair wheel took his standing leg, interrupting their saying nothing. Though he buckled from the shunt, almost fell but did not down, no one, not even her, turned towards him. Like those around him, her eyes drifted on, surfing high-held banners, following shivering placards on wooden stakes, browsing the heads and hats of the assembled. She walked on, and he watched her, the way she did not turn, the way she did not notice. He wanted to call her, but could not be sure if he'd already done so. Had he shouted, though, she would have turned. She would, he was sure. She would have paused and looked back. Of this he was certain. So, yes, he could call out to her, and when he did, she would turn. Or he could say nothing. He could say nothing and stay at the site of the collision and just wait. She'd soon notice his disappearance. She'd turn back. She'd turn and jink her way back through the crowd towards him. Yes, better that. Better to say nothing and just wait. So he said nothing. He watched her walk and said nothing. On she moved, and she did not turn. Marchers slipped around him, a branch in the brook, a rock in the stream. They smiled, they talked, they sang. He watched her walk. Men came between them, a scrag of shout and song, women and men, children too, how many, and how quickly, all happy, all singing, pouring, he thought, streaming past. He heard their voices, pockets of conversation neatly stitched, hemmed with Confederate laughter. A troupe of musicians flowed ahead, their drum and flute, their guitar and arrogant trumpet. The swell of them. The swell of the hated jazz. The heavy steps, the arrhythmic handclaps, the tone-deaf voices, their teeth beneath their smiles. They flooded on and past. But he could still see her, visible through legs, past heads, over shoulders, her gas blue jacket and green scarf, her half-turned face, her hair in the curt breeze, her closed and gravid lips. Before him, a passage opened, a ricked alley past the band, boop, 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 a clarinet joining, and straight to Mathilde. I'm going to join her. He thought this in a full declarative sentence, as though for the tape was for a record. He was going to join her, but the corridor was quickly occupied by the woman and the wheelchair that had charged him. She was parallel to the musicians, a fiddle now, a saxophone, her progress impeded by their righteous chorus. He watched them both, she and the man she pushed. They were made of button badges, their coats and hats and scarves bathed in discs, some the size of pucks, others the size of pennies. Short slogans, lines inside circles, universal symbols. He could make them out even at that distance, the glister of them in the morning shine. In front of them, Mathilde walked and did not turn. He waited for the inevitable collision, but it didn't come. The woman pushed past Mathilde. He saw her face, old enough to have seen 2 wars, lined enough to have seen several more. Witch eyes and jutting chin, hair's there most likely. So many old women in the crowd, so many old men. Her companion looked younger, perhaps her husband, perhaps her son. Where his legs once were, flat black slacks were rolled at the cuffs. She pushed and sang, rounding Mathilde at speed. Free at last, she clattered others as she pushed on, scuffing shoes and nicking chins. They looked, under their buttons, gloriously, furiously happy. Drummond wanted to protest. to shout at them across the crowd, "You are to blame for this, you and your reckless progress." But they were old and one a cripple, and both fully committed to the cause. Those around him, the beatnik youths in their denims, the stooped vicar, 3 old women and their older husbands, would turn on anyone who shouted in the face of such devotion. They would carry no pitchforks or flaming clubs, but wield a collective withering, a common glare, shame the pacifist beating. He shouted nothing. He waged instead a silent war, a campaign against the man and woman, their pigmail garb, their shaking fists and singing voices. He had them against a wall and held the man's legless body and beat him. Oh, how long it lasted. With every blow, he moved backwards into the crowd, retreating slowly into its belly. The kindly faces, the competing bands, a timpani now, a banjo, the women in their pearls and flat shoes, Tory wives, children on the shoulders of men, all in laughter, laughing in spite of it all. He looked for Mathilde. He could just see her, just the curve of her shoulder, the green scarf around her still unturned. As he caved in the cripple's skull, he lost her finally amongst the trotting crowd as they crested the coming hill.